Right, hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be back in another Things Conference, day 2 here in the house. So for those of you who have not come across Multitech, we make gateways and sensors, and we've actually just deployed sensors and launched sensors now into the EU and the US. We've sold getting on for 1 million endpoints for LoRa over in the States and North America, so we now expand that portfolio into Europe. Of course, you all know us for the gateways, but actually we do so much more than just gateways. We manufacture 6-8 million devices per year. Obviously not all LoRa, some of them are cellular, and many of them are in all walks of your life. I mean, in the craziest places, hand sanitizers, pest control, when you get up from the bathroom it flushes, could be Multitech. So we're in a lot of parts of your life, but you know, it's been great the last 10 years being part of this LoRaWAN ecosystem. So without further ado, I'm going to invite up Dan Heath from Connection. And just to prove that you don't have to be Dan to be on this presentation, Johan Stockin from the Things Industries. So,
Hi, Dan.
So Dan, one of the things that we've started to see, right, in our partnership here, deploying networks, is that you can't always put the network up exactly where you want to put it up. So talk us through this image here. Why would you put up a gateway next to a brick wall?
So let me start by explaining, if you guys weren't in my piece earlier, Connection's trying to facilitate some difficult use cases with water metering, and typically water meter sensors, they're with properties. Properties mean that we need to get our gateways close in urban, suburban environments. So we're trying to get gateways for this difficult use case right in these urban environments. So we end up having to use effectively whatever infrastructure we can get our hands on, physical infrastructure. And in this case, as the graphic shows, we're literally mounting on streetlight columns in order to actually get gateways into places. But it's not always optimal. You've got these difficult environments, of course, because properties are right adjacent to the places that we can literally, the only places we can get gateways. So we're having to accept there's some of these real-world compromises, but yeah, it's an interesting challenge.
Did you go behind the brick wall, you know, to sort of test the signal strength, you know, maybe connect a few assets in the building?
Well, our ambition, of course, is to try and build this sort of UK-wide IoT network. The use case that we're using to drive it, being the smart water metering, is a difficult use case to start with. So the idea is if we design for the hard stuff, then, of course, we will be able to facilitate maybe the stuff with slightly less attenuation.
So we got a few other images here just to sort of show you, you know, what it's like out there. So I think when we imagine large-scale, wide-area networks, we all imagine things like TV transmission masts that are super high, cell tower masts that are also way above the building and the tree shadow line, but not here, right? So is this a problem that you're not above the building line?
Well, I mean, there are optimum ways of designing a network, but then if I can't change where my sensors are sometimes, I have to, you know, tweak the way that I'm doing things in order to meet the requirement. When we use streetlights as an asset, for example, we'll be pushing those way up. And the gateways being flexible in deployment is so critical because it just means that, yeah, okay, streetlights are a vehicle we can do this with, but there are a number of other options. We can organize with private property, commercial property to have gateways mounted in those locations as well. There are situations where actually masts do provide an element of coverage. So, you know, to be able to have an asset which we can deploy wherever we need it, anything from needing to be that thin light on a pole, which at the end of the day, I'm trying to convince a street lighting engineer whose main job it is to light up a street, to let me use his toys to put my own stuff up there. So, you know, having that flexibility is really key, really key.
So, Johan, you're no stranger to putting gateways up around here.
Well, I never put many gateways up myself, but yeah. So,
did you see significant challenges when you were below the roof line, or you know, what was your observations when you were bootstrapping up the Things network?
Locations is one of the main challenges, especially deploying outside networks. So when we deployed our first public network here in Amsterdam, we just we looked on the map and we thought, okay, we have to find high places. And in Amsterdam, as you know, everything is pretty flat. You can't really build high-rising buildings because of the ground. But it also helps because we don't have big buildings or mountains or anything like that. So it doesn't really matter. What we hear from customers is that locations is one of the big challenges. But for you guys, I think with a network where you have these high data rate requirements, you really have to be close to the homes. This is what you get. And once you have the gateway there, it's really hard to climb in a pole and do some updates. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. So how many of these gateways, go in? What's the sort of density when you're in a more suburban area like this?
We're talking hundreds of gateways for a sort of, let's say, a typical deployment. But our customers are getting used to this. They're getting fixed on it. And I think they realize that digitization had a whole other tool set which they just weren't aware of before. So now the sort of bids that we're seeing, we'll see the sensor count in the millions. And that means the gateways are going from the hundreds to the thousands per deployment. So they're literally, we're putting them up where we can in order to facilitate that. But, treading the line of being sustainable in a business as well.
And do you get a power supply from the municipality from the lights, or?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So at the moment that's the power source. Is we're having again to work with these local authorities and say, hey, can we use your thing and connect the power from that. So there's a lot of collaboration going on to make this all happen.
But they still have power during the day, right?
Oh yeah, they have power during the day. And don't get me wrong, we've had that challenge. We've had the, hang on a minute, why is that gateway going off at 4 o'clock every morning? Well, it turns out it's on a timer, the power supply for the light. So we made some changes in design. We make sure there's a split power supply at the bottom, so we've got dedication, etc.
Nice.
Well, I mean, in a sense, it's really no different than what the telco guys are doing on the cellular space, right? They're sticking all their transmitters up on same height as well. So, yeah, so clearly works. So here's an interesting one. Walk us through this one, Daniel.
Well, it works, but I think if you're going to go and deploy the kind of density of network that we have literally outside people's homes, you're going to get some questions. You're going to get the occasional complaint. We had a particular one. Now, I guess, how many people are out there putting gateways up on streetlights outside people's homes? I don't know, maybe you can... do you have
well,
any?
I mean, I see a lot of that stuff, distributed around... I live in the States. All of that infrastructure is very visible on poles and streetlights. So, it's one of these things where I walk around these days looking up. I go into supermarkets, I look up. I go around the streets, I look up. There's more up there than there is down here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's full of stuff up there.
We see your gateways. What's great for us is when we are deploying them, they've got this nice little visible panel on the bottom, so us from the ground level can see that thing's been powered and it's working properly. But the feedback has been that, of course, residents don't like the fact that there's already a street lamp outside their house illuminating their bedroom at night, and we've just added another bright source of light. So, some feedback here we'll work on together. Maybe we can reduce the intensity of those LEDs.
Yeah, sometimes you can't reason with people, can you? So they got a street light outside their house, and now they're a bit pissed because there's an LED coming off of the gateway, which, is handy when you're at the bottom to see whether it's working or not. But yeah, you're right. We obviously need to listen to what the community is telling us. Didn't expect a single LED to be an issue on a street light, but all right. Well, you can see a lot of really awkward situations where this stuff has to be deployed, right? And, going out there doing truck rolls, not easy. So wanted to wrap up here today with what's called a CIA triangle. And this is an academic way of highlighting how zero trust relationships are formed. Typically, this will be an asset, a platform, a user. So obviously in this situation, it's multi-tech conduit IP67-200 units that are being integrated into the thing stack, but not just the thing stack, that needs to go into the account of connection up there. So So one of the ways that we do that with Zero Trust is we use basic station and cups. So Johan, if you want to walk us through a little bit on cups and how that enables a Zero Trust relationship.
Yeah, so one of the challenges we always see with setting up gateways is that you really have to go in the gateway and configure it for a particular environment and provision it with credentials for the network you want to use it. And so you guys are using the Thingsta Cloud, which is our infrastructure, but you have your own environment. So you have your own, you need your own credentials there at some point. And so when you ship gateways to Connexin, you either have to pre-provision them with all the keys for Connexin, or you need to find a way that's more scalable, because you guys ship a lot of gateways to many customers, right? That's the only way to make it scalable. So we are quite happy with a provisioning step that's part of the basic station protocol that basically is before it establishes the connection with the network server, and that is to basically it dials into a generic endpoint and it asks, okay, hey, you know, what is the network I have to connect to? And as part of that step, it gets the credentials from that provisioning server, and then it dials the connection, it makes the connection to the network where it has to go. And that works really well because that allows you guys to ship generic gateways that are just programmed to dial into that endpoint, to get configuration, to get security credentials. And in the cloud, have a way to claim those gateways and to say, okay, this gateway has to connect with these credentials to this environment.
I'd say this is the best bit about being stood between you guys, is because in this environment, I'm the customer, right? I've got my own customers, and I have to deal with those guys all day. But right here, I'm just holding my hands up and go, if you guys can get your gateways working with your services, this is a really good situation for me. So, you know, that whole piece working almost flawlessly, basically. You know, we just allow the kit to fly out and install.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of other networks and network server providers, they have their own software for the gateways. And 8 years ago already, we sort of made a strategic decision not to develop software for the gateways. And the reason why we do that is that we get a lot of, it's convenient, of course, because you kind of have a lot of control over the gateway and stuff. But the problem is that if a customer has a problem with the gateway, it's really hard to figure out where that problem is and who to call. Is it the gateway vendor you bought the gateway from, or is it the software that runs on the gateway? So we work with gateway vendors like Multitech, and we try to make sure that there is a software platform that they know works, and they manage, and they trust, and where we have an integration with, without us needing to run our own software on the gateway. And so if there's something wrong with the gateway, you know who to call, and if there's something wrong with the network, you also know who to call.
Yeah, best of breed. And it's not just the gateway to the platform. Of course, we got that whole backhaul experience. You saw how most of this is deployed on the tops of streetlights and public places like that. So is there fiber running into that? Do you get cables? Is that all cellular based?
I will use the lowest latency backhaul that I can get. But the reality is that streetlight infrastructure today, there are some organizations which are forward-thinking, and they've put fiber to the lamppost with the foresight of this kind of new wave of radio comms, not just LoRa, other IoT technologies, other cellular. So where that's there, we'll use it. But we need that flexibility in the deployment. So if there's another option, such as the cellular backhaul, that's great. And again, the lowest latency cellular backhaul is always the best option for us.
Yeah, so what we do here in our factory in Minneapolis, our corporate HQ, we manufacture generic product, and then we configure all of that, the basic station, the CARPs, the cellular APNs, various different scripts, config files, parameter files. That all gets burnt in at the factory, and then it gets shipped pre-provisioned. And we hear a lot about zero-touch provisioning. Multitech is doing a lot of work at the moment, a significant amount of investment, actually, in order to realize a near zero-touch provisioning. But the only real zero-touch, where you don't have to barcode anything, you just literally screw it in and power it on, is a pre-configured system. So in scale, you know, that's how we achieve scale. We do that kind of provisioning. So maybe to finish up then, where you see the future moving here. You know, how are you going to do more? How are you going to reduce some more of that friction down to get hyperscalability?
Well, the slides that I just run before on the other stage, we were talking about if Connexion's successful, this continued journey, 2030, we could see between 11 and 15 million sensors hitting our network. So the conversations with Johan and team is going to be around, hey, we need to be ready for this. Are you ready for it? And we've got this great partnership working to make sure that everyone has got a predictable model for scaling everything together. And with you guys, it's just that deployment again and again. Can we get that consistency? What's the 1% improvement that we can hit every time? And then you guys telling us, hey, we've got some new options coming up. We've got new backhaul options, for example, or maybe there's additional features we've not quite thought about yet. And the conversation that we have allows us to then realize potential futures, which improves the deployment. Maybe we can get to a point where dense networks aren't so critical because there's enhancements in the radio level. We don't know. It's all a conversation. We're just exploring all the time.
Maybe we replace that LED with Bluetooth, and then that way, you know, no lights on, frustrating the homeowners, and you can just walk along the street and dial them up. Right, well, thanks ever so much, guys, for joining us. Hopefully you got a few tips there on how real deployments is a dense deployment. It's about deploying for the future. It's about removing those friction areas, and that key trust relationship is integral to bringing all of this alive without having a developer in the backpack of some dude as he climbs up a lamppost. So enjoy the Things Conference. And by the way, Multitech has a booth just out there. We're giving away sensors and a gateway, all pre-configured for the Things industries. Just plop in a business card or your contact details. We'll pull a winner later on this afternoon. So we're straight out there. Thanks ever so much. Right, and thanks to our panel.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience, maybe? No questions? I was wondering, before we go to very nice contents winners of the IoT shop, what do you see as the biggest trend now in Internet of Things? Can I ask you?
Ooh, yeah. Well, I think I think if we look at Things Conference 5 years ago, there were a lot of presentations on individual components, on antennas, on modules, on all the little puzzle pieces. And I think that what we are seeing now is things are really coming together in box solutions and integrated solutions. And time to value is decreasing. So it's not something revolutionary, but things are really coming together now.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Another warm applause, please. Thank you.